Eric Brewer. I work for NOAA. I'm the science coordinator for the 3 new National Marine Monuments that were designated in 2009. They were established by President George Bush using what's called the Antiquities Act. He established the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, Rose Atoll Marine National Monument, and the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument. 192,000 square miles of ocean habitat is protected under this Marine National Monument. Some of the deep sea habitats are unexplored. They're so varied and unique. The imagination cannot even think of some of the things that are down there. The shallow water environments are full of amazing corals and reef fish, and there's still a lot to learn. We don't know a lot of what's in these monuments. These areas are amazing. Yeah, they're special in so many ways. First, we have to remember that they're special to the indigenous people. This has been part of their culture and their life. This is their home. And so these areas are special to them, and they're special to the rest of us in that it opens our imagination to what's out there and what's in the ocean. 7/10, as they say, the planet is covered in water. And these areas show us the amazing, not only life, but structure and ecosystems that are there.
People, they hear of Muriava, but they have never been there. It is far. Our ancestors with our equipment many, many years ago were able to say that there was a current that ended at Rose Atoll. And sure enough, the southern equatorial current ends right in the channel that goes into Rose Atoll, Muriava. Muri meaning end, Ava meaning channel.
This is the way that North America was pre-colonial times. Passenger pigeons used to black out the sky. They used to migrate in the millions.
What I know about this place is not for humans. It's just for these birds and all the animals, what I know. The Pacific's birds and animals.
Just a little tiny island that you can walk around in a half an hour. It's a very special place. And it was named Rose in the 1800s when an explorer came by with his wife. Yeah, a lot of folks do think it's because of the color of the reef. The reef here is made out of mostly crustose coralline algae, rock-hard type algae, and it's very pinkish. But it's a convenient coincidence.
Coming to a place like this, you're seeing wildlife as it used to be. And I think it would probably, for the average person, that would be pretty overwhelming. But for someone like me, I absolutely love it.
The island used to be pretty much 100% Pisonia trees, and now we're down to 5. And so Bob is here looking at the ants and how the ants relate to the scale insects. Very similar to an aphid. And it sucks on the leaves of the Pisonia trees. And the Pisonias here have been horribly infested. It's been a problem throughout the tropics, everywhere where there are Pisonia trees. And here it's been particularly bad.
There's been some human contact over the years anyway, and during those visits, people bring in their crates of bananas or whatever to do. They come onto the island and these non-native insects get here.
You need a permit to come visit here. And we're very strict with our quarantines coming here to try to prevent the introduction of invasive species. That is a huge concern.
The ants are not native, except for possibly one. These 3 species that we're dealing with, nobody has ever eradicated them before from any sized area, so it's a new challenge. We think it's possible because there has been some success with other ants. And if it's just important enough, you try. Pisonia are important because it's a native tree out here. Old photographs show that the island was dominated almost exclusively by Pisonia at one time, and they're critical for bird roosting and for nutrient cycling. They're really important as far as a big input of leaf biomass.
It's a lot of different partners who work together: Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, National Marine Sanctuaries Program, and the American Samoa government. We're working with NOAA, with their Coral Reef Ecosystem Division, and they have these units called Ecological Acoustic Recorders, or EARs. And they put them in underwater, and it's basically a tape recorder with a hydrophone on it, an underwater microphone. They have one in the Ava, and they have another one outside on the reef. They will record things like humpback whales singing, shrimp snapping, and they can tell us when boats are coming in and out, so we know if there's unauthorized usage here.
Within the lagoon, it's like the bluish green, and the reef is so healthy. All these colors of the rainbow. Although Rose is far away, it's still part of the American Samoa archipelago, and American Samoa people still look at it as belongs to them. They still come together when meetings are called to discuss and offer their opinions on how to better manage Rose Atoll. I don't think there's any other place in the world that I've seen like Muliava.
I never see any place unique like this place. It's like our place used to be before. That's what I think about this.
The Mariana region is one of those places where plates are converging, one plate's going underneath another, creating lots of volcanism, and most of it's underwater. So in the Marianas, there's 9 islands, but there's over 50 submarine volcanoes. The Marianas Trench Marine National Monument is made up of 3 units. We call them Island Unit, which is the northern bit of the Marianas Trench. It contains the water and the sediment of the area surrounding the 3 northern islands, Euracus, Mog, and Asuncion. You then have what we call the Volcanic Unit, which is made up of the hydrothermal vents and the underwater volcanoes, stretch all the way down the arc. And then it's made up of the Marianas Trench, deepest trench on Earth. When we're writing the ecosystem science plans for the 3 monuments, we definitely make sure that local input is part of writing these ecosystem science plans. It's crucial because basically this is their environment. This is their traditions. This is their home.
Growing up in Saipan, I've learned a lot about the Chamorro ways of fishing and just the Chamorro culture and the values. A lot of the Chamorros and the Carolinians, they really rely on our resources, especially marine resources.
A lot of these monuments are not abstract ideas. You know, as we sit here and we think way out there in the ocean, this is their backyard. This is where they live. This is what they lived off of. This harvested a lot of the fish, and it's part of who and what they are. And so it's critical. They're part of any kind of planning, any kind of research or science that's done out there.
So we want the future generation to be able to see what we see.
If we talk about the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, here we have a very unique area where we have a lot of volcanology, we have a lot of shifting geological movement, we have hydrothermal vents that are there and the unique biota living on these vents. Among the fantastic sites, we found a seamount that's erupting almost continuously, and that was really exciting because it was the first place in the world where we could see an active deep ocean eruption occurring. And yet there was still life living around the top of the seamount. It's so deep that there's no sunlight from the surface, so the whole ecosystem is based on the chemistry of these vent fluids, and so we're really interested in understanding the relationships between the chemistry and the biology and the volcanoes and the geology. Another incredible place had liquid CO2 coming out of the seafloor. That had only been seen at one other place before.
Another place we went to had pools of molten sulfur on the seafloor. The sulfur was black because it had so much iron mixed in. The places we found with lots of sulfur seemed to have a lot of very dense biological communities. In that site, there were flatfish that hadn't been seen before, the first vertebrate we'd found. The interesting thing about the deep ocean vents is we were completely unaware of them until 1979 or so, when they were first discovered. And we discovered all kinds of new life forms that we had no idea existed. And it's really a fundamentally different kind of life on Earth. If there is life on other planets, it's going to be some microbe that's living in the ground, or maybe on a moon with some ocean under a bunch of ice. And so it's going to be more like these hydrothermal environments than the surface life on Earth. The Marianas, it's so unique. We started working there, we discovered all these new sites, new species, new phenomena. There's so many things that we've never seen before. All that contributed to the understanding that this really is a special place and should be designated as such, as a marine national monument.
As a refuge manager for the Fish and Wildlife Service, I get to go to very remote places and do surveys like this, and it's one of the most spectacular parts of my job, to come to these rare areas and see what very, very few people in the world get to see. When we come here, we're doing seabird surveys, shorebird surveys, insect surveys, marine debris, making sure there isn't any hazards for turtles on the beach. In general, the purpose is to check on it and monitor it. We get out here so rarely that we just want to kind of take the pulse of the island and see what's going on. These places are protected for very, very good reasons. We have wonderful breeding populations of seabirds here. There are millions of sooty terns that are nesting here right now. There are thousands of mass boobies and many other species of seabirds. I'd say there are most likely 12 to 13 species of seabirds here right now that are nesting and roosting. This is one of the last refuges, one of the last places for them to breed without seeing people and being disturbed by anthropogenic forces. There's some cultural heritage on this site. I'm sitting on the beacon that was created for Amelia Earhart. These beacons were put up on Howland, Baker, and Jarvis. And there used to be a historic camp here from the young Hawaiian men that settled the island. And there's the remnants of an old shipwreck. So there are signs of human habitation, but they're starting to crumble, and nature's winning the battle against that.
During a towboard survey, there's two towboarders pulled behind the boat on 60-meter lines, and both divers are on scuba gear. I was fish tow diver surveyor, and I was looking for reef fish above 50 centimeters, and I would identify the species and estimate the size of each fish that I saw. And my buddy is over there surveying the benthic community, looking at coral, algae, benthic fauna of the reef. During a 50-minute dive, we both document the respective things that we're surveying. We actually survey the entire circumference of most of the small islands that we go to.
You know, one of the things that the tow diver surveys do document is the presence or absence of apex predators. And one of the amazing things about working in the Pacific and remote island areas that we document a lot more shark population. We would sometimes look over our shoulders and see 50 to 70 gray reef sharks behind us. There's a lot more studies coming out that show just how important sharks are in healthy ecosystems and apex predators in general. So once you take the apex predators out, then everything that's further down the chain has potentially to be severely affected. And these things don't bounce back right away. It may take decades or potentially centuries for these things to recover.
These islands are spectacular. They're relatively pristine, relatively untouched. Just the beauty of the coral reef and all the marine life is just stunning.
If you were to peer beneath the ocean's blanket, most people see fish and they see coral. But what you don't see are all of the organisms that live inside the coral and the holes and under the rubble. ARMS are devices that we install on the reef floor in order to understand the cryptofauna of a coral reef community. When you first install it, it's like free space. It's this apartment complex that hasn't been inhabited. 2-3 years later, you have full occupancy. So you have all these organisms that collect within a 9-inch square platform. And it's basically this entirely unseen and understudied community of organisms. We have these ARMS units across the Pacific on all of the islands that we survey. It enables us to compare them across broad spatial, environmental, and human impact gradients. Places like this are really worth preserving. If we compare it to Oahu, for example, where there are over 1 million people, the reefs look completely different. These are really the baselines of what coral reefs and other ecosystems were like before. And if we don't have places like these that show us how it's supposed to be, how can we preserve the systems in our own backyard?
Kingman is an amazing place because this is an incredibly healthy ecosystem. These are what we call ecological baselines. These are systems, to the best of our knowledge, that are relatively intact. They've been free from fishing. There's not a whole city built up on these places. That allows us to really understand how ecosystems function and what their health should be.
So I think what the oceanography team does is we provide some context to the biological observations. A lot of these things are very big picture types of things, like changing global climate is a big problem.
What we do mostly on the cruises is actually replace the oceanographic instruments that we had deployed a couple of years ago. And also we do a suite of coring as well, where we take basically a drill and take a core from the center of the coral. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. The nice thing about this cruise for me is that we went back 2 years ago, we did some smaller cores, and you can't even tell where we did the core. So I feel really comfortable that we're doing the right techniques and that the corals aren't being affected negatively.
The Coral Coring Project is a collaborative effort with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and the main goal is to retrieve coral cores so that we can see how coral changes its growth rate over time.
Basically, the increase in the CO2 in the atmosphere is basically being drawn down into the ocean, and that's causing the ocean's pH to reduce and so become more acidified. The accretion rates are changing as the ocean chemistry changes, and we're pretty sure that that's due to anthropogenic input of CO2 into the atmosphere.
People always ask me, what impact am I making on these coral reefs that are thousands of miles away? I'm an ocean chemist. I'm involved in the study of ocean acidification. And I tell them that your carbon dioxide footprint goes into the atmosphere, and that carbon dioxide over time will dissolve into the ocean. And so everyone in the world has an impact just based upon the way they live.
It's incredibly important to protect these places. They teach us a lot.
You can't find some of those things on those islands. They're hard to find anywhere around the world.
If we can get to a point where we really understand how a natural system works, we can figure out how to better manage a system that is impacted by humans.
We don't know all the answers. We haven't even explored all the corners of our own planet.
These areas show us the amazing, not only life, but structure and ecosystems that are there.
As marine national monuments, I think they need to be studied. I think it's important that people see what it's like for a reef, that it hasn't got a lot of pressures on it.
You know, the ocean provides sustenance, recreation, and a healthy life. I think a fundamental societal goal should really be to minimize our footprint on this planet and better coexist with the natural environment and the world's oceans.
Everyone is connected to the ocean, even if you're not close to it. Being out here really helps me realize that everything that we do has an impact on the earth, and everything eventually reaches the sea.
With changes in the world now, with the climate, the weather, etc., we need to keep reminding our people that yes, we still need to be good stewards of the ocean, take care of what's in it for our future generation.
This